Ravi's heart stopped when he saw Zara laughing with Arjun in the corner of the library, her hand resting on his chest as she whispered something that made him grin. The love letter Ravi had spent 3 nights perfecting crumpled in his sweaty palm as he watched the girl he'd loved for 2 years lean in to kiss another man. It had started innocently enough. 2 strangers assigned adjacent seats in Professor Mehta's organic chemistry class. Zara had arrived late that first day, her dark hair disheveled from running, cheeks flushed pink. She'd slumped into the seat beside him with a dramatic sigh, muttering about overslept alarms and missed buses when she'd turned to ask for a pen. Her eyes, warm brown with flecks of gold, had met his, and Ravi felt something shift inside his chest. "I'm Zara," she'd whispered, extending her hand. "And you're about to become my academic lifeline." That was 2 years ago. 2 years of sharing notes, study sessions that stretched until dawn, coffee runs between classes, and countless moments when Ravi had almost told her how he felt, how she made his pulse race when she leaned close to examine his calculations, how her laugh was the best part of his day, how he'd started taking longer routes to class just to spend more time walking beside her. Now, standing frozen in the library doorway, watching Zara's fingers trace patterns on another man's arm, Ravi understood that his careful plans, his perfect timing, his foolish hope, none of it mattered anymore. "There you are." Zara's voice startled him from his trance. She was walking toward him, Arjun trailing behind with that easy confidence Ravi had never possessed. "We were looking for you." "Arjun, this is Ravi, the genius I was telling you about." Arjun extended his hand with a smile that seemed genuine enough. "The famous seat partner. Zara talks about you constantly, but not the way I want her to," Ravi thought, forcing himself to shake Arjun's hand and paste on a smile. "Nice to meet you." "We were just discussing the literature assignment," Zara continued, oblivious to the tension radiating from Ravi. "You know how hopeless I am with romantic poetry. Want to join our study group?" The irony wasn't lost on him. Studying romantic poetry while watching the woman he loved fall for someone else. "I actually have to run," he managed. "Family dinner." Disappointment flickered across Zara's face. "Rain check, of course." As they walked away together, Zara's hand slipping naturally into Arjun's, Ravi slowly uncurled his fist. The love letter lay wrinkled beyond repair, ink smudged from his perspiration. He'd written and rewritten those words dozens of times. "Dear Zara, I know we're friends, but I need you to know that you mean everything to me. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thought before I sleep. I love your terrible jokes and your brilliant mind, and the way you hum when you're concentrating." The rest didn't matter now. Ravi smoothed the paper once, then tore it into small pieces, letting them fall into the nearest trash bin like confetti for a celebration he'd never attend. 3 months into Zara's relationship with Arjun, Ravi had perfected the art of being the supportive best friend. He listened to her gush about their dates, offered advice when they fought, and pretended his heart didn't crack a little more each time she said Arjun's name with that dreamy smile. "He's taking me to that new rooftop restaurant tonight," Zara announced, sliding into their usual spot in the campus cafe, "the one with the city view you mentioned." Ravi had mentioned it because he'd imagined taking her there himself, candlelight, reflecting in her eyes, her hand in his across the small table, the city lights twinkling below them like stars. Instead, he nodded and took another sip of his coffee. "Sounds romantic. It will be. He's been so stressed with his internship applications lately. I think he needs this." Her expression softened with that tender concern Ravi wished was directed at him. "You know how he gets when he's overwhelmed." Actually, Ravi didn't know, because Arjun rarely seemed overwhelmed by anything. If anything, he appeared to take Zara's devotion for granted, canceling dates last minute, showing up late without apology, treating her more like a convenience than a girlfriend. But pointing this out would make Ravi sound bitter and jealous, which he was, but that wasn't the point. "I'm sure he appreciates how understanding you are," Ravi said carefully. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm too understanding," Zara mused, stirring her latte absently. "Like last week when I found those messages from his ex on his phone. He said they were just friends catching up." But she trailed off, vulnerability creeping into her voice. Ravi's protective instincts flared. What kind of messages? Nothing explicit, just intimate. Inside jokes, memories of their time together. When I brought it up, he said I was being paranoid. She looked up at Ravi with those expressive eyes that had captivated him from day one. Am I being paranoid? No, Ravi wanted to say. You deserve someone who wouldn't make you question your instincts, who would be grateful every day that you chose him, who would love you the way I do. Instead, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his, a gesture that could be interpreted as friendly support, even though his skin burned at the contact. Trust your gut, Z. You're one of the smartest people I know. If something feels off, it probably is. She squeezed his hand briefly before pulling away. Thanks, Ravi. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll never have to find out, he thought, even as the words felt like a knife twisting in his chest, because this was his role now. The reliable friend, the safe harbor, the one who would always be there to pick up the pieces when Arjun inevitably let her down. That night, as Ravi sat in his dorm room supposedly studying but actually imagining Zara and Arjun at the rooftop restaurant, his phone buzzed with a text from her. Dinner was amazing. Arjun surprised me with reservations at the place you recommended. Thank you for being such a good friend. He stared at the heart emoji for a long time, knowing it meant nothing and everything simultaneously. Then he typed back, glad you had fun. You deserve all the happiness in the world. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her in months. Zara's 21st birthday arrived with the first snow of winter, and Ravi had been planning something special for weeks, not a grand romantic gesture. He'd learned to bury those impulses deep, but something that would show her how much their friendship meant to him. You didn't have to do all this, Zara breathed. Standing in the doorway of the study room, Ravi had transformed. Fairy lights draped the walls, her favorite takeout containers sat warming on the desk, and a small pile of carefully wrapped gifts waited beside a homemade chocolate cake. It's your birthday, Ravi said simply, trying to ignore how beautiful she looked in the soft light, wearing the deep blue sweater that made her eyes luminous. Where's Arjun? Her smile faltered slightly. He had to work late, some project deadline, but he said he'd try to make it later. Ravi had seen Arjun at the gym 2 hours ago, laughing with friends, seemingly unconcerned about any deadline. But tonight wasn't about Arjun's failures. It was about celebrating the woman who had inadvertently become the center of Ravi's universe. They ate dinner sharing stories and inside jokes, falling into the easy rhythm that had sustained their friendship through chemistry labs and late-night cramming sessions. Zara opened her gifts with childlike delight, a first edition of her favorite poetry book, a playlist he'd made of songs that reminded him of their friendship, and a photo album chronicling their 2 years of adventures. Ravi, this is. She flipped through pages of candid photos, them making faces during boring lectures, celebrating her first perfect grade in organic chemistry, building a snowman last winter. You kept all of these, I kept all of them. The words carried more weight than he intended. Something shifted in the air between them. Zara looked up from the album, studying his face with new attention. They were sitting close on the small couch, the fairy lights casting a warm glow around them. And for a moment, one breathless, impossible moment, Ravi thought he saw something deeper in her eyes. Ravi, she whispered, and he could smell her perfume, could count the flecks of gold in her irises, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. He leaned forward slightly, heart hammering against his ribs. This was it, the moment he dreamed about, hoped for, imagined 1,000 different ways. Her lips parted, and he could see his own longing reflected in her expression. The study room door burst open. Sorry I'm late, babe. Aryan's voice shattered the moment like glass. Traffic was insane, and then I had to find parking. He stopped, taking in the romantic atmosphere, the intimate way they were sitting. Oh, did I interrupt something? Zara sprang away from Ravi so quickly she knocked over her water glass. No, we were just… Ravi was showing me the photo album he made. That's sweet, man, Arjun said, but his eyes were sharp as they moved between them. Very thoughtful. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced normalcy. Arjun dominated the conversation, making jokes that weren't quite funny and touching Zara possessively. Whenever Ravi spoke to her, when they finally left, Aryan's arm firmly round Zara's waist, she looked back once with an expression Ravi couldn't read. Later that night, alone in his room, Ravi replayed those few seconds over and over. Had he imagined the connection? The way she'd leaned toward him, the softness in her voice when she'd said his name, or had it been real? A glimpse of what could have been if Arjun hadn't walked in. If Ravi had been braver, if the timing had been different, he would never know. And somehow, that was the cruelest part of all. Spring semester brought a subtle but noticeable change in Zara. The bright confidence that had drawn Ravi to her seemed dimmed, replaced by a nervous energy that made her check her phone constantly and second-guess every word. Aryan's behavior had grown more controlling. He questioned her friendships, especially her relationship with Ravi, and had a talent for making her feel guilty about things that weren't her fault. "I probably shouldn't be here," Zara said for the third time as they settled into their usual study spot in the library. "Arjun said he might call, and if you don't answer, what?" Ravi asked gently, though watching her diminish herself for someone who clearly didn't deserve her was becoming physically painful. "He gets upset, says I prioritize school over a relationship." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Which is ridiculous, right? We're students. School is literally why we're here." Ravi set down his highlighter and really looked at her, the dark circles under her eyes suggesting sleepless nights, the way she startled every time her phone buzzed, the careful way she spoke about her own boyfriend. "Zara, are you happy?" The question hung between them like a challenge. She opened her mouth to give the automatic response, then closed it, her facade cracking just enough for him to see the truth underneath. "I should be," she whispered. "He loves me. He tells me all the time." "That's not what I asked." Before she could answer, her phone erupted with an angry buzz, not a call, but a string of texts that made her face go pale. Ravi caught glimpses of the words as she scrolled. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Are you with him again?" "I have to go," she said, already packing her books with shaking hands. "Zara, wait." Ravi reached for her arm, and she flinched, as if expecting pain. The reaction sent ice through his veins. "Talk to me. What's really going on?" For a moment, she looked like she might break down entirely. Her lower lip trembled, and her eyes filled with unshed tears. I can't do this anymore, Ravi. I thought love was supposed to make you feel strong, but I feel like I'm disappearing." "Then stop," he said urgently, standing to face her. "You don't have to disappear for anyone." "The Zara I fell in love with." The words escaped before he could stop them, hanging in the air like a confession. Her eyes widened. "What did you say?" Ravi's heart raced, but there was no taking it back now. "I said the Zara I fell in love with was brilliant and funny and fearless. She didn't apologize for taking up space or worry that caring about her education made her a bad girlfriend. She knew her worth." "Ravi," her voice was barely a whisper. "I've loved you since the first day you sat beside me," he continued, the words pouring out like water through a broken dam. "I've loved you through every late-night study session, every moment you cried over someone who doesn't deserve you, every time you doubted yourself because he made you feel small. I love your terrible jokes and your brilliant mind and the way you hum when you're concentrating. I love everything about you, and it kills me to watch you lose yourself for someone who can't see how incredible you are." Tears were flowing freely down her cheeks now. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were happy, or I thought you were, and your happiness mattered more to me than my feelings." He reached up to gently wipe a tear from her cheek. "But you're not happy, Zara, and I can't watch you break apart for someone who's supposed to love you." She closed her eyes and leaned into his touch for just a moment that felt like a lifetime and was over too soon. When she opened them again, there was something resolute in her expression. "I need to go," she said quietly, but not to him. I need to think." She left him standing in the library, surrounded by the ghost of possibilities and the weight of finally spoken truth. Graduation day arrived with unseasonable warmth and the kind of golden light that made everything look like a movie scene. Ravi adjusted his cap and scanned the crowd of families and friends gathering on the quad, searching for one familiar face. Among hundreds, he found her near the fountain where they'd eaten lunch countless times, looking radiant in her cap and gown, laughing at something her parents were saying. She'd cut her hair shorter since their conversation in the library 3 months ago. A small change that somehow made her look more like herself than she had in years. The months following his confession had been complicated. Zara had ended things with Arjun that same week, a decision that had apparently involved tears, shouting, and several mutual friends taking sides. She'd needed space to figure out who she was outside of that relationship, and Ravi had tried to give it to her, even when every instinct screamed at him to be there for her recovery. They'd maintained their friendship, but something fundamental had shifted. There were moments of almosts that felt like maybes, conversations that danced around the edge of something deeper, glances that lasted a heartbeat too long. But Zara was healing, rediscovering herself, and Ravi refused to complicate that process with his own wants. "There's my favorite study partner," she said, breaking away from her family to approach him. The smile she gave him was warm and genuine, the first completely unguarded smile he'd seen from her in over a year. "How does it feel to be officially graduated?" he asked, memorizing the way the sunlight caught in her shorter hair. "Terrifying, exhilarating, like I can do anything." She paused, studying his face with that familiar intensity. "I got the fellowship, Zara. That's amazing." The research fellowship in London had been her dream since sophomore year, a chance to work with leading scientists in her field, to build the career she'd always wanted. "When do you leave?" 2 weeks. Her expression grew more serious. "Ravi, I need to tell you something." His heart clenched, already knowing what was coming. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her eyes one more time. "That day in the library when you told me how you felt, it wasn't that I didn't feel anything back. It was that I needed to learn how to feel it clearly, without the noise of everything else. And now I know that I love you too." The words hit him like lightning, joy and heartbreak intertwined. "I love your patience and your kindness and the way you see the best in everyone, especially me. I love that you were willing to stay my friend even when it hurt, that you cared more about my happiness than your own feelings. But," he said softly, "because there was always a but I'm leaving for London, and you have your residency starting in Chicago, and we both need to figure out who we are in the world before we can figure out who we might be together." Tears gathered in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "The timing is wrong, Ravi. It's always been wrong." He nodded, understanding even as his heart broke all over again. "Maybe in another life. We got the timing right. Maybe in another life. I sat beside someone else in chemistry class and never knew what I was missing." She reached up and straightened his graduation cap with tender fingers. "But I'm grateful for this life, even if it's not the one we might have chosen. You taught me what love should feel like, patient and kind and safe. Whatever happens next, I'll carry that with me. Promise me something," he said, catching her hand in his. "Promise me you'll be happy, wildly, unapologetically happy. I promise." She squeezed his fingers once, then let go. "Promise me the same, I promise." They stood there for a moment, two people who had loved each other in all the wrong moments, surrounded by the celebration of endings that were also beginnings. Then Zara's family called her for photos, and the moment passed into memory. As Ravi watched her walk away, he realized that sometimes love wasn't about getting what you wanted. Sometimes it was about being grateful for what you'd had, even if it was never quite enough. Zara had been his seat partner, his friend, his almost love, and his greatest lesson in letting go. The sun was setting behind the campus buildings, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. Tomorrow would bring new cities, new challenges, new chances for happiness. But today, Ravi allowed himself one last moment to mourn what might have been, before walking toward whatever came next. Question for the audience: was Ravi right to wait so long to confess his feelings, prioritizing Zara's happiness over his own? Or should he have spoken up sooner even if it risked their friendship? In matters of love and timing, is it better to take the risk of rejection or to preserve what you have, even if it means never knowing what could have been?